Welcome to the 700 Club. Just imagine a family all jumping into water to escape scorching flames. That happened after a monster inferno exploded outside Fresno, California. The Golden Gate is on fire. Triple-digit temperatures and sparking the burn that's consumed more than 2 million acres so far. Will the fires spread beyond the state, and what could possibly put them out? Dale Herb has that.
Firefighters across California are again battling dozens of wildfires, fueled by record-breaking heat, and several of the fires are still completely out of control. One of the largest fires outside Fresno exploded overnight to 135,000 acres. With 0% containment, after already burning dozens of homes in the town of Big Creek.
Your family's all jumping in the water to get away from the flames?
Yeah, there was really no warning. The fire just moved so fast, so there was only so much we could do.
Monday night, the California National Guard attempted a rescue using a military Chinook helicopter after reports of hikers trapped at a mountain resort. But heavy smoke prevented the pilots from making a safe landing.
Getting rescued right now.
But this rescue over the weekend was successful when a helicopter pulled hundreds of people to safety as flames surrounded them at a campsite.
Some of them were in critical condition with burns or broken bones. To get aircraft to fly at night into the mountains is really something else.
This year, wildfires have burned over 2 million acres in the Golden State. There have been at least 8 deaths and more than 3,300 structures have been destroyed. The weather contributed to fire conditions. Record-breaking triple-digit temperatures hit California over the weekend. Los Angeles County saw 121 degrees. Now they're bracing for high winds.
The heat is extreme. It's not going to be quite as extreme over the next several days, but it's still well above normal. And really, there's not a lot of weather that is going to coming at them to improve things. I don't see any moisture coming out that way.
And fires are raging in other western states. Near Spokane, Washington, authorities say up to 80% of the homes in the town of Malden have been destroyed by a fire sweeping through the area. In Colorado, a wildfire north of Denver is now the largest in state history, burning nearly 100,000 acres. But a wild temperature drop by as much as 70 degrees and a snowstorm could come to the rescue as early winter-like weather arrives in the Rocky Mountain states.
I'll tell you what, the snowstorm in the Rockies is going to put that fire out north of Denver pretty quickly. They're used to just some crazy stuff out there.
A Colorado state climatologist says she's never seen such a wild temperature swing. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, in other news, the president is getting help from an unlikely source. An old ally turned enemy is defending him against some controversial claims. John Jessup has more on that story.
That's right, Pat. In a Monday White House press conference, the president pushed back against a report that he ridiculed American soldiers who died in World War I when he canceled a visit to a cemetery in France back in 2018.
It's a disgrace. Who would say a thing like that? Only an animal would say a thing like that. There's nobody that has more respect for not only our military, but for people that gave their lives in the military.
Now, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, author of a scathing book about the president, is defending him against those charges. Bolton, who was on that trip, says the story's claim that the president called the fallen soldiers losers is, quote, simply false. Bolton said the president canceled the trip because of bad weather, not out of contempt for the soldiers, and that he did not make disparaging remarks. Another former White House official is also supporting that claim. Former Deputy Chief of Staff Zach Fuentes said he was in the room when canceling the trip was discussed, Pat, with the president, and he never heard those words.
Well, it was a difficult thing. They said, you've got to fly, but you can't get in with helicopters. And so you'll have to drive back, and the Secret Service says, well, you'll be 3 hours out of touch with Air Force One and the communications. And you can't do that. We can't let you do that because you're president. And if somebody starts a nuclear attack, you're the guy that's in the cockpit. You've got to make the decision. So it was unfortunate. And to see Biden and the Democrats playing this up, that Atlantic story was absolutely false, and to see this kind of fake reporting, that there are people who just hate Trump so badly they'll do anything, no amount of lies, to get him out of office. And, you know, yes.
I heard on Fox this morning that 19 people have gone on record to say that that didn't take place. That
19?
19, yeah.
Well, but, you know, you heard Biden make this enraged, you know, statement and played off of it. And, you know, he knows it's not true, but they're now putting ads out. And it's just shocking to see this kind of thing going on. But if I read it right, the law and order is going to be the main theme, and the Democrats know it. And anything to take down this president, it's unbelievable. But we talk about polls, and as I've said many times, and I'll say it again, the poll that counts is the one that takes place on Election Day. And you need to go to the polls and vote in person, right where. Don't worry about absentee or any of that. Go to the polls and vote. John?
Pat, meanwhile, the president is talking about ending the U.S. trade relationship with China, raising the possibility of decoupling America's economy from its biggest trading partner. Economists use that term to describe a break in trade relations between two nations.
China's spending the money we give them to build up their military. So when you mention the word decouple, it's an interesting word.
China analyst Gordon Chang told Fox News decoupling is the right move because China has gone from partner to adversary and global threat.
Xi Jinping has been talking increasingly about this Tianxia notion, the notion that China has the mandate of heaven to rule the entire world. They not only have the right to do it, they have the obligation to do it. Absolutely a good idea. You know, China is configuring its military to kill Americans. We should not be enriching a hostile Chinese regime with our trade and with our investment. So I believe that decoupling is what we absolutely have to do.
The president also said the United States will hold China responsible for the devastation, Pat, caused by the coronavirus to the American people and the American economy.
You know, it's amazing that this Xi, who is destroying Christian churches, trying to re-educate the Muslim Uyghurs, is now talking about he has a mandate from heaven. That was what the old emperors of China used to say, I have a mandate from heaven. But he doesn't believe in heaven. I don't think he believes in anything except himself. But he is a wicked, vicious dictator. And the buildup of the Chinese arms is simply astounding. They now have more ships than we do. It looks like they have a stealth bomber that was stolen from the design of one of our stealth fighters. They're talking about a supply of nuclear arms, and they have ballistic missiles. And it is, from every indication, they have more of everything. And as I've talked about before, I want to show you again, the Chinese Empire is thinking of the time of the Mongol Empire in 1279, and that's how far it went. It was China, it was Russia, it was the Ukraine, it was Iran, it was Iraq, the Middle East. They had it all, and that's what the Chinese are now thinking about. And he talks about, I've got the mandate of heaven. This is the man who's destroying Christian churches, re-educating Uyghurs, and setting up what amounts to a concentration camp for his own people. But I don't think heaven has ever touched him. And if he has a mandate, it's not from heaven, it's from the pit of hell. But anyhow, keep an eye on it, because that's what they're going for. And they're building, they have more ships, they have more planes, they have more technology, they have more weapons than we do. And yet he says, well, that's just a fake, because Trump is just trying to get people scared so he can pass his budget. The buildup that we're engaged in is so important. You know, for example, intermediate nuclear weapons, we stopped doing those. The Chinese have intermediate nuclear weapons. And if there's ever a controversy about Taiwan, believe me, we cannot project enough force into that area to blunt the Chinese attack. Their ships, their planes, everything they've got is so much more powerful than we have right now. And so Trump wants to rebuild the armed forces, and it's time to do it, and stop talking about the fake article in the Atlantic, which was not true. But we've got to see the real threat that's confronting the United States. And it's not just China with the mandate. It's the same thing with Erdogan and Turkey. They think they've got a mandate to set up the caliphate for that whole Muslim empire. They all are working on this concept of the glory of what used to be for their country. John?
Pat, some good news to report on COVID-19 as the number of new cases continues to fall. There were just 24,000 new cases reported Monday, according to Johns Hopkins University. That's the lowest since June 21st. The death toll has plunged as well, with 267 recorded Monday, the lowest since the 4th of July, and far below the record of 2,666 set back on April 17th. Still, there are concerns about an increase of cases after the Labor Day weekend as people flock to beaches, bars, and restaurants to celebrate. We won't know the impact for a few weeks. Well, as the numbers continue dropping and scientists push for a vaccine by the end of the year, other treatments for COVID-19 are still in the works, including a drug that fights asthma and other breathing conditions. As Lori Johnson reports, the drug could keep patients in the early stages of the disease from landing in the hospital.
Ever since COVID-19 burst on the scene, scientists saw right away it goes for the lungs. Then came a surprise when they saw that people treated for certain lung diseases seemed protected against the coronavirus. These COVID-19 patients with asthma and a lung disease, COPD, were in Asia, Europe, the United States, and elsewhere. We're just learning of this good news because they were either underrepresented or completely absent from the data.
So it seems to be a universal thing, which suggests that something that these patients are doing is keeping them out of hospital. It's not keeping them from getting COVID, but it's keeping them, at least in some cases, keeping them from getting very sick.
Turns out these patients who contracted COVID-19 were already using an inhaled corticosteroid, such as budesonide, to treat their asthma or COPD. Professor Dan Nicolau leads a clinical study testing budesonide's effectiveness when given very early after a person is infected with the coronavirus.
The earlier you use the steroids, the better. And that the effect should be around half, so it should reduce hospitalizations within our math model by around half.
Unwilling to wait for study results, some doctors have begun prescribing inhaled budesonide to patients recently diagnosed with COVID-19.
I can't do medicine without my faith. I often say to my patients up front that I consult Dr. Jesus.
Texas physician Ted Trimble has given it to 10 COVID patients with plans to continue.
9 out of those 10 did extremely well. Within the first few treatments, they could breathe much easier. One ended up needing to go to the hospital for oxygen support, but none required intubation or ventilation.
Tennessee family physician Tom Rogers has also seen positive results in 11 patients so far.
I started using it and with no side effects, and it seems to be if you treat early along with a Z-Pack and zinc, it really is very effective.
Rogers gives the budesonide specifically to COVID patients with respiratory symptoms like mild cough, wheezing, or shortness of breath. In cases where patients exhibit other symptoms such as loss of smell, achiness, or fatigue, Rogers quickly prescribes the controversial hydroxychloroquine with zinc and a Z-Pack.
I am a Christian, and my faith really carries me through every day, caring for people for all these years. And there's a couple things I'll tell you. One is there's another very powerful thing that works against any disease or illness, and it's called prayer.
While the Food and Drug Administration does not recommend budesonide or hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19, there has been movement. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn now admitting some hydroxychloroquine studies suggest a benefit and pointed out doctors are free to prescribe drugs off-label, and the FDA does not regulate the practice of medicine. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. Pat, back to you.
Well, it's encouraging. We're also hoping to have some kind of a vaccine. It looks like the Russians and the Chinese are trying to steal our intellectual property on that to get in advance and have a patent on it. But there's several firms that are coming close to a vaccine, but people are cautious about that, and well, they should be. I remember a long time ago, the mother of a friend of mine, when we were having that polio problem, you know, poliomyelitis, they call it infantile paralysis, and they were having shots for that. And she took the shots, and she got polio and was paralyzed. So an early adapter of some kind of a vaccine is not too wise. We need to study to make sure we've got a good one. But let's say it's not going to be political. We'll just hope and pray that somehow we'll get one, because there are two major firms, there's several firms, and a lot of money has been given by the government to have a vaccine, so we're hoping there. But the last thing we want to do is to enforce people to take it.